I'm going to share with you an excerpt from The Parable of the Trapeze by Danon Perry. Sometimes I feel that my life is a series of trapeze swings. I'm either hanging on to a trapeze bar, swinging along, or for a few moments in my life, I'm hurtling across space in between trapeze bars. Most of the time, I spend my life hanging on for dear life to my trapeze bar of the moment. It carries me along at a certain steady rate of swing, and I have the feeling that I'm in control of my life. I know most of the right questions, and even some of the answers. But every once in a while, as I'm merrily, or even not so merrily, swinging along, I look out ahead of me into the distance, and what do I see? I see another trapeze bar swinging toward me. It's empty, and I know, in that place in me that knows, that this new trapeze bar has my name on it. It is my next step, my growth, my aliveness coming to get me. In my heart of hearts, I know that for me to grow, I must release my grip on this present, well-known bar and move on to a new one. Each time it happens to me, I hope, no, I pray, that I won't have to let go of my old bar completely before I grab the new one. But in my knowing place, I know that I must totally release my grasp on my old bar, and for some moment in time, I must hurtle across space before I can grab onto the new bar. Each time, I am filled with terror. I do it anyway. Perhaps this is the essence of what the mystics call the faith experience. No guarantees, no net, no insurance policy, but you do it anyway, because somehow, to keep hanging on to that old bar is no longer on the list of alternatives. Yes, with all the pain and fear and feelings of being out of control that can, but don't necessarily, accompany the transition between trapeze bars, that time is still the most alive, most growth-filled, passionate, expansive moment of our lives. Hurtling through the void, we just may learn how to fly.
Feels it give way beneath her and sings, sings, knowing she has wings, and sings, sings, knowing she has wings.
Picture this, a man tabling at a public sidewalk. He's got paper and pen on his table with a sign that says, "Sign up here." And there's one of those thermometer graphics like you often see in fundraising campaigns. Now, incidentally, you won't see one of those here, even though this is the kickoff service for Westsides' stewardship campaign. Instead, you may have noticed a red brick road along the wall outside the sanctuary, starting to fill out with bricks as we work toward our goal. But back to the street scene. The tabler's poster with the traditional thermometer implores the passerby, "Join and help us reach our goal." This fellow's not trying to raise money, though. He's recruiting adherents. The goal at the top of the thermometer is mainstream religion. Below that, you have sect, then faction, and cult. Near the bottom is bunch of nuts. And even below that, the starting point of this odd member drive, the round part where the mercury rests at the bottom of his thermometer, is marked "handful of wackos." The scene I've described was depicted in the syndicated cartoon Non Sequitur. I'm not sure what inspired the artist, but I think it's fair to say that as a religious community, Westside has long since gone beyond the bunch of nuts level. I think we're at least at cult or faction level now in Fort Worth. And we don't intend to stop there. Our vision statement says that Westside Unitarian Universalist Church will continue to grow and continue to become a more influential liberal religious presence through active service in our community and the world at large. A couple of years ago, this congregation made a big decision to move toward that vision of growth and community presence. Members voted not to renew the lease with our longtime tenant, Angel Montessori Preschool, when that lease was to come up in 2 years. Well, that moment of transition is now upon us with the lease ending in May. By June, all of the furniture fit only for toddlers will be gone from our building. Whole rooms we've barely used most of the time because they've been crammed with school stuff will become available for church activities. And we will no longer be limited to holding gatherings here on weekends or after 6:30 only on weeknights. If we see Westside in the parable of the trapeze, we are about to let go of the bar we've been holding on to for a long time, the financial bar of steady income that the school provided as our tenant. As we take that leap, there are no guarantees, no net, no insurance policy, as parable writer Perry put it. But you do it anyway, because somehow, to keep hanging on to that old bar is no longer on the list of alternatives. After all the dreaming and scheming that we have been doing in preparation for this change, there's no turning back. We have chosen to take the leap. I was listening to KERA, our local public radio station, a few months ago. It was fun drive time, and my ears perked up, knowing that I was going to be giving you this sermon on the amount when Westside's own fun drive time came around. I thought maybe I could get some inspiration from the pros at NPR. I confess, though, that I was kind of discouraged when I learned about some of the great thank you gifts they offer. Like a fun Mr. Rogers sweater mug. When you add hot water, Mr. Rogers changes out of his suit jacket into his comfy cardigan. I thought, I can't compete with that. I mean, we have some pretty great mugs in our coffee collection here at Westside, but none of them, so far as I know, changes clothes when you add coffee. The thing is, though, that we are aiming for bigger changes here than from suit coat to cardigan. We are helping each other reach out for all the other trapeze bars in our lives. Before we even reach them, when we are leaping midair toward those bars that have our names on them, we know that that bar is my growth, my aliveness coming to get me. I think of my husband, William, who years ago, before I knew him, had become unhappy working for a big corporation. The company had been decent to him, investing in his development and promoting him into a management position, but his soul was slowly dying. His creative capacities were all constrained within the company's PR goals. One day, at lunch with a coworker, he said offhand something like, "I could do better than this off on my own." His coworker looked at him and said, "Why don't you? What's stopping you?" It dawned on William that there was nothing keeping him from taking the leap to start his own business, nothing but fear. He could see that other trapeze bar swinging toward him, empty, and waiting for him to jump. Almost 25 years later, he is still happily self-employed, making a living, doing what he loves, and doing it on his own terms. I think of people here in this room who have leapt out of unsatisfying jobs or unhealthy relationships into more life-affirming situations. And of people who have lost a loved one, lost their religion, or left the place they used to live, and wound up finding much-needed community right here. The leap of faith Westside is taking has many individual stories like these, wrapped up inside our shared story. As we take this leap together of reclaiming our space and expanding our service, there are many people in our area who are looking for a community like this one. It takes some courage to seek it out and some faith to jump into the unknown. One Westside member named Daryl shared recently that he and his wife Christina had found Westside a few years ago. This was during the church's transition period in between settled ministers, and so the whole community felt a bit unsettled. It took a while for these newcomers to find their niches in the church. But even though they were new, they had something big at stake that made it worth the effort. Daryl had felt isolated throughout his life, and when he came to Westside, it was like he had finally found his people who shared values like compassion, justice, and equality. He told me, "We stayed for the people and had confidence that this would be a supportive place to help nurture those same values in our children." A community of belonging and shared values is no small thing. Every new person who visits here takes a risk to reach out toward the trapeze bar that is this community for them. For when we invest ourselves in a place like this one, invest our time, our talent, share our life stories, share our funds, share our dreams, there's no guarantee of what we will get back from those investments. But there is the right possibility that your dreams will merge with those of the community. And if it's not already just the place that you long for, it may become that place with your support, your leap of faith. Recently, I took my daughter to the IMAX theater, and we saw a movie called America's Musical Journey. I was struck by all of the risks that artists took to carry out their visions. And by the way, the great musical breakthroughs that make American music unique came from people of different backgrounds and dreams merging their music together. No one could have predicted what would come from it. The improvisation of jazz, where you don't know what's coming next, and there's a soulful authenticity to the sound, it could only have developed here, and the unique mixture of cultures found in places like New Orleans. Or consider how the charts caught on fire when Elvis Presley, a white man, dared to cross racial borders with sounds inspired by African American musicians. All of the great artists see that next bar swinging toward them, and they jump with joy from the old, soaring into the air. I expect that even as Westside retains those qualities that make this unique in the religious landscape of our city, we will also welcome new voices who can help us grow into a community beyond our present imagining. A place that is as growth-filled, passionate, and expansive as the transition from one trapeze bar to another. So I didn't spend too long during Fun Drive fretting about our church's lack of exciting coffee cups. A liberal religious community like ours doesn't just have passive listeners. We have active members seeking lives of service and purpose. I've been inspired this past year by some of the leadership emerging at the national level of our denomination, like the bold decision by the board of the Unitarian Universalist Association to commit $5 million from its endowment to reverse a historic failing of our tradition and invest in the leadership of Black UUs. Jim Keyes, who was the top lay leader of the National Association until his death recently, explained it like this: I look at things from a governance lens and trying to assess risk. To me, doing nothing or doing something more timid was a greater risk to our movement and the values we say we have and the way we live in the world. It would put our overall mission at risk, he says, not to deal with society's most pressing issues now. I couldn't help noticing the contrast between this readiness to take a leap of faith on principle and the way another religious leader responded to crisis and opportunity last year. Perhaps some of you saw some of the same social media posts about the gospel of prosperity preacher Joel Osteen over in Houston. The multimillionaire pastor was criticized for not opening the doors of his 16,000-seat megachurch sooner to the thousands of people made homeless by Hurricane Harvey. Now, you can't trust everything you read, especially on social media. And news reports later indicated that the megachurch had experienced some flooding and did coordinate supplies and later open its doors to the needy. So perhaps Osteen's response to Harvey was more generous than it first appeared. Still, I find myself at odds with the gospel of prosperity ideas that he espouses. According to this line of thinking, Christian faith will bring material success, especially financial rewards. The prosperity gospel teaches that God rewards faith and tithing to your church with personal wealth. Not spiritual riches, but literally money. It's a kind of magical thinking that has certainly served people like Osteen and Jim Baker and Benny Hinn, who have made millions by peddling it. I have a different sort of faith than those folks, if I can use that term on my own terms. I do believe that growing in faithfulness to one's values will lead people to give more and more of their gifts, time, talent, and treasure, to serve others, but not as a means to further enriching themselves. Instead, we give because we recognize that we are not separate from all the rest of humanity and life, and because we experience the richness of connection and meaning and purpose that comes from using our blessings to create more peace, more love, more joy in everyone's lives. I look around at this sanctuary and I see not only new faces, people I hope will find rich connection and purpose as a result of being part of this community, but I also see a living force of love that spills outside of this building in so many directions. Westside has long been a welcoming congregation for gay, lesbian, bisexual, and transgender people and supports programs like Samaritan House. Members have worked earnestly for the environment through our Green Sanctuary group. Just this year, you voted for us to become a reproductive justice congregation. We're working on issues related to racial justice, economic inequality, immigration, and so much more. This month, we've been collecting canned goods for the South Central Alliances of Churches Pantry to help feed our hungry neighbors. We give our weekly offering every week to other organizations who further our values. And as I saw on Facebook posts just last night, there were many Westsiders out joining students as they marched for their lives in the national arena. And the list goes on from there. The exciting thing is that social action is not just something that our Social Justice Council talks about and tries to get the rest of us to be involved in. It's spread throughout our religious education for children, youth, and adults. Our justice values permeate worship. They show up in conversations at Adult Forum. They shape our affinity groups, like the young adults and the meditators and the women. This church's vision of growth is not just to grow for the sake of more seats in our sanctuary. We're not trying to become a megachurch and increase our personal wealth. I can guarantee you I will never become a multimillionaire as a UU minister. And by the way, the $2,000 was either choose the $2,000 award or go to Transylvania. I'm going to Transylvania. Our vision statement says we will become a more influential liberal religious presence through active service to our community and the world at large. our Unitarian values of freedom, reason, and tolerance, our Universalist vision of beloved community and love beyond belief. These are meant to penetrate and transform our own lives and the world around us. That's what we are about. I love the image of the dove that is widespread in churches around this time of year. I'm a week early from most churches. This bird always symbolizes peace and love to me. And the energy of its flight catches something in me that is ready for that freedom of movement and wholehearted giving of oneself to one's actions, like a bird on the wing. When I see such a bird, it's an invitation to be like a bird.
Be like a bird who, halting in her flight, on a limb too slight, feels it give way beneath her and sings, sings, knowing she has wings, and sings, sings, knowing she has wings.
I have confidence that Westside is ready to fly. This community has wings. Now is not the first time Westside has made a leap of faith to include more people in its work of transformation and to strengthen the current of love coming out of this place. This congregation's history is replete with such instances. New meeting places, new staff positions, more members, more impact in the wider community. That's been the trajectory of this church from the beginning. Remember that Westside has already gone from the humble beginning of a handful of wackos, clear up to a proper sect. The limb underneath us right now may feel not quite secure enough to hold us as the school moves out, but that's okay, because we do have wings.
Be like a bird who, halting in her flight, on a limb too slight, feels it give way beneath her and sings, sings, knowing she has wings, and sings, sings, knowing she has wings.
But back to the trapeze artists. There's one thing about that metaphor that is counterintuitive. For this congregation, as we take this leap of faith with Angel Montessori's departure, our members and friends are both the one jumping and the one catching. There's a great deal of trust in letting someone catch you. When this community made the decision 2 years ago to fully claim our building and more fully pursue our mission, you trusted that you would catch each other financially. In time, we do aim for our membership to grow and for new members to share their time, talent, and treasure and help make up the shortfall that we now face from the school's lost rental income. But that will take some time. Right now, during the transition as we jump from one trapeze bar to the next, we need everyone who can to increase their giving. If you've been hanging around and haven't made a pledge yet, now is the time. If you've gotten started but your capacity or commitment has increased, move on up to the next level in your pledging. If you've been around for a while and this community has become one of the bedrock institutions of your life, reflect that in your pledge. My dad used to say, "Do it like you mean it," when I was doing a chore. I invite you to pledge like you mean it. As the Stewardship Committee explains in more detail in their presentations, and do try to catch one of those, Westside has leaned heavily on a small number of larger pledgers. That's not financially healthy for the church. If more people move up a level or two in their giving, we can bridge the gap in our income, even before we have a net gain in members. It's totally doable. Now, I want to acknowledge that not everyone's financial circumstances are the same. Our income levels and expenses are different. Some people have educational debt or medical debt, while others are on fixed incomes. So please do not hear this as a guilt trip. If you are already doing what you can, Thank you. Thank you. We value the time, the talent, and the treasure of every person who supports our mission. For those who can do more, know this: we are counting on you to catch the whole congregation and help us get to that next trapeze bar that is swinging toward us. We trust you not to let us fall. With the full commitment of all in our community, we can get the bricks in our red brick road filled up all the way to our end goal of financial self-sufficiency. That we can do. On the other hand, I'm not so sure Westside will ever get to the top of the non sequitur cartoon's religious thermometer, at least not in the eyes of other Texans. Although Unitarian Universalism has been around for several centuries, some still do not regard ours as a mainstream religion. And that's okay with me. I'm content to be a radical sect that builds a vibrant community of risk takers and love makers, people who bring alive the values of compassion, justice, and equality here in North Texas. Let's take this next leap of faith and find out just what we can do when we say yes to the aliveness coming to get us on that next trapeze bar. May it be so. Amen.